Hi, I'm Emma Muir, soul coach, energy healer, and well-being guide, and an unapologetic curious soul. Connected Conversations brings well-being, love, and connection through authentic and open conversations, sharing amazing people who are being of service through their businesses, talking about all aspects of well-being and healing in life and in business. As a soul coach, I help men and women unlearn and unfuck themselves from childhood experiences, patterns, programming, and trauma. I know deeply learning through my own path to well-being over the years, all the different parts and habits that are needed to live a heart-centered life filled with well-being. Through my curious nature, I delve into connected conversations showing their journey in business and in life to inspire you to take the path to your well-being. The truth is, we're better supporting one another. We're better sharing our gifts to help one another in deepening our connection to ourselves and others. Thank you for watching or listening. I'm grateful for all your support, for sharing, for liking and commenting. All of you is welcome here. Here is our wonderful guest today to introduce their gifts and passion to you.
Jonathan Creek. I'm a story master, a brand story expert, and a researcher into all things viral and story. And I really believe that story is one of the most important ways that we communicate in the world today. And so that's what I tend to focus on, helping people share their stories in a way that influences behavior and helps them succeed.
Welcome to Connected Conversations, to bring healing, love, connection to your everyday lives through open and authentic conversations. I am honoured to share time with Jonathan Creek today from Virable, and he is a storytelling expert, or a storytelling master, I think he said before, guiding people to share their own stories authentically and powerfully so that they can create content that connects them to their clients and so that their clients can connect to them. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. Not only is Jonathan a friend of mine, but he's also someone that I've worked with as well. So I know how good his work is and just how powerful it can be. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Em. It's always great to talk to you because we always go places unplanned because we've both got inquisitive minds, right?
Yeah, and this is, why I do the podcast, because I'm just such a curious soul. So I get to speak to my amazing friends and share what they do, but I also get to ask questions that I think I probably haven't asked before, and I'll ask during the interview as well. So I actually want to, and I know a lot of this, but I want to start with your background and your lack of work. Like, where did you come from?
Oh, wow. Where did I come from? Well, originally I was a TV reporter.
Well, from the womb originally. No, let's not go back that far.
What's that joke going around at the moment? I once was a man trapped in a woman's body when I was born.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, that's the one at the moment. So no, look, as a kid, I was always fascinated with the media. I was fascinated with how people communicated, but I was really fascinated with how messages traveled, in a sense. And I grew up in middle-class Melbourne in a street where there were a ton of kids, maybe 20 of us when I was at the age of 8. So 20 of us that were under 16. And I was really fascinated with, I suppose, what you could call the rumour file and how stories and gossip and things spread through the street. And then next door, I had the local postmaster was my next door neighbour, and he was an older guy who always loved chatting to all the neighbours, and he sort of knew everything. And, so he knew everything from the adult point of view, and I sort of knew everything from the kids' point of view. And I started to understand that when we came together and shared our stories, it gave us insights into people's life and gave us better understanding of what they were up and about. And so I sort of became obsessed with being a messenger in a way and sharing people's stories. And along with that, I was pretty tech sort of savvy, and I love video and storytelling and the influence that movies like Star Wars, and we're recording this on May the 4th, and you've got
May the 4th be with
you. Star Wars t-shirt on. I'm a big Star Wars fan as well. It was probably the first movie that really transported me to the the power of stuff, the power of influence and obsession in a way. And so I was, from a young age, I was pretty aware of what Star Wars was doing, in the sense of it was getting you to buy into it, and then you'd get your parents to buy it. You know what I mean? So I could see that sort of mixture, and Disney has really refined it as probably the greatest company on the planet that actually does that process. So when you put all that together, I was like, well, what am I going to do? I can't make movies in Australia because there's not really a movie industry. Maybe I should go to television. So that's what I did. I set my sights on being a television reporter or a TV reporter. Everyone was like, oh, you're going to go and be a sports reporter and be the next Eddie Maguire and all that sort of stuff. And that's not what I wanted to do. What I actually wanted to do was go to war zones and tell the stories of people from war zones, because I connected with the emotional stories. I knew the power of emotions. And I found that the most satisfying. If I could tell an emotional story that affected people, whether they laughed or cried, that was sort of the goal and the thing that I focused on. And in news, you don't really get to do that a lot. Really, in news, it's 90% you're just reporting what happens. And it's pretty dry. Well, it's not anymore, but it used to
I was going to say, are we talking about the same news?
It's not modern, it's changed. And so back then, I'm talking late 90s to for the decades to the 2000s. And it was pretty straight up and down. So then I decided that I wanted to shift to somewhere where I could be a bit more creative and tap into that emotional side to motivate people to make a difference. And so strangely, I joined a show by the name of Today Tonight, which a lot of people will instantly in Australia put in the trash can of television. But really, when you peel the layers back and you get rid of all the hoity-toity ABC people and the haters, when you actually peel it back, a show like Today Tonight, its main goal was to help people who'd fallen through the cracks. Now, I'll admit, and it's given that to do those stories that help people, yes, I had to pay a price. And that price was that I had to do the supermarket stories. I had to do the petrol price rise stories. I had to do, the stories that would drive, what's the cheapest chicken at the supermarket. But in between those annoying ones, which I'd be able to knock over pretty quickly, were these stories where I could really go and help people. And probably one that still sits with me 15 years later was a family of 5. All of them were deaf. And they'd paid all their superannuation to have a house built for them by a builder, and he built the frame and then ran off with all their money. And I did a story with them every year for 5 years. And you're talking, the kids went from waist height to 6'3". So I was doing the stories. Did
you meet them at the time that they had built and been left?
I met them at the start, right after, within 12 weeks of the builder not coming back and he took all their money. Wow. And they made the mistake of, he asked for payment up front to buy materials, and he thought he could trust him, and it was a mess. But I followed this family through the legal system. How do they get their money back? How do they get justice? And this builder was still working. So I became a bad builder chaser, essentially. It's what I love the most, because I got a bit of a buzz out of it. And I also got a bit of satisfaction if I could help someone and hold people to account that were doing the wrong thing. And this builder kept working, and then, Channel 7 would help sort of fund this family through the system to get over the hurdles. And we got to the point where we got a conviction. The court's like, yes, this guy has to pay you your money back. Here's the court order, whatever. And the courts have a year's head start on it. Anyone can serve papers as a part of the magistrate's court. And these papers sat in the magistrate's court for a year. And the officers are going, well, we couldn't find him. But after 1 year expires, anyone can deliver the papers. So 1 year and 1 day, I had it in my calendar. I went and got the documents. I found the guy within 7 hours and served him the papers. This poor family's been living in their garage for a year. And so they were the sort of stories that drove me to be on a show like that. Then essentially, just to speed things up, because I don't want to spend, this is your life.
No, this is a very big snippet, and I've got lots of other stuff I want to get to, my little curious mind.
But then essentially, while that was all happening, the media started to change. Journalists stopped being independent and wanted to be celebrities in a sense, because social media was coming and there was clout to be had. I was really not into the famous bit of it. If you go back and look at my whole catalogue of stories, there's not a lot of stories where you see me in them unless I had to be. Where you get a lot of journalists who will start their stories with them right at the start and saying nothing really of importance. So I was driven by helping. I was fascinated by the science of storytelling, the stories that my friends would remember, or the ads that my friends would remember. Prior to being a journalist, I worked at Channel 9 where I had to watch every TV commercial before it was approved to go to air. And so I got really sensitive to what was annoying, but also really sensitive to what was memorable. And so I started to see patterns in ads, and then I was transferring those patterns into my own story. So tactics I'd learnt off classic ads. And, guys in advertising back then were geniuses, like genius marketers, and the ability to connect with the human brain and influence them to spend money, which is probably the hardest thing to get anyone to do. So I was sort of mixing that advertising knowledge and storytelling, and then the internet was coming, which was allowing anyone to tell stories, but they weren't really doing it very well because they didn't have much experience in it. And then I just became fascinated with how can I set up a business that is right in that sweet spot of telling your story that has an emotional reaction that drives commerce. So how can businesses do it rather than just putting out annoying ads? So it was almost a selfish pursuit, because I'd sit there and say, well, YouTube is becoming really, really unfun. Facebook's becoming a dumpster fire of just people making really bad videos. And so every time I'm going on these platforms, I'm just being annoyed by these people who don't know how to tell stories. They're just trying to sell me something. So, my plan was to save the internet from one bad video at a time. And that was the motto that drove me. And to do that, I had to work out, well, what's the alpha predator of content on social media? Because it was viral videos that kids would make, and they'd spread because they were good. They did something to someone that then caused them to forward it on. Now, back when I started researching this was back when, you had to forward videos on via email.
I remember those.
And you'd get an email and you'd scroll for 10 minutes until you got to the bottom, and you'd get this little video the size of 2 postage stamps, because that's the only size it could be to get through the mailer filters. And I was just fascinated by how many people would be on emails prior to me getting it. And it'd be like, all these people were triggered to do something, which was to send this on. So what is it? I'm a storytelling expert. I've been employed for nearly 20 years in television, telling other people's stories every day, and I don't understand how this is happening. Like, these guys are making these videos with no budget. I could go anywhere, anytime when I worked at Channel 7. I had a black Amex. I could spend 6 months building a story with helicopters and professional cameramen and professional editors, and my stories wouldn't spread like those stories. What am I missing?
Beautiful. I love that. And it's important because I do want to highlight that point, because it's not just about marketing for you. Like, sharing that story about the family, and I know your background as well. There's such a depth of caring about actually getting the person's authentic story out there, because that's so much more beyond marketing. Because I don't know about you, I can't tolerate ads anymore, either on radio, or I can't tolerate any kind of ads. I used to be able to tolerate them probably about 15, maybe 20 years ago.
Buy my book. No, that's an ad.
We'll get to that. And so I can't tolerate them because they have lost that cleverness to them, that, the intelligence or even depth. It's blatant. And I often watch something and think they're really treating humans like we actually haven't evolved, like we don't have a brain, and that we're actually quite stupid. Like I I don't know if there's one clever ad out there, but I haven't seen it yet. Even when I've watched like advertising awards and, you know, on ads and stuff like that, I've dialed into watching stuff on the internet and I'm still like, no, I'm sorry. You need to go back 15, 20 years when they actually had some content, but you're still here doing that. You're still here giving people an avenue to share their stories, to market businesses, but from a very different space. So,
it's a really interesting evolution that we're going through, particularly with mainstream media, because you and I are old enough to remember what television ads used to be, and TV stations in a way used to set a standard with the advertising agency saying, listen, you can't build crap TV ads or we're not going to air them, because we don't want people to get up out of their chairs and change the channel, because we know how hard it is to get them back out of the chair to change back. This is almost TV remote days. But even then with the remote, and this is why, and so what's happened now is that television as a business model is failing, because they've got these really expensive locations with really expensive gear, with people on really high wages. You know, it's a hangover from the 80s and the 90s where people would get paid ridiculous amounts of money. Trust me, I was one of them.
Yeah.
And so what's happening now is the bottom's fallen out of that now. And so if you look at the ads, and I do it all the time because I used to, as I said, I used to watch every TV ad. I've spent over 8,000 hours of my life watching television commercials. And so what's happening now is we're getting a lower bracket of advertiser. And the lower bracket of advertiser has lower budgets because the returns are lower. So the big guys who have big advertising agencies, who used to have really good creative teams to make sure that the 30-second spot that they landed in Friends at 7:30 on a Monday night to an audience of 1.2 million people had to have a hook, had to do something and capture people's hearts. Now they're blasting out the same ads across social media and television and just going for volume rather than value.
Well, you're right. I mean, I was going to say that it feels like the quality of it has gone. And keep in mind how people view things has changed. I mean, I don't watch commercial TV rarely, so I don't get advertised to. I'm not their market, but people were watching TV back then, but also there seemed to be a care factor in there as well. Now it's just, and also there was an innovation to ads as well. Like there was always something different being done, a new way of doing things. You could see an evolution of an advertising campaign over time as well. And now there isn't any of that. I can watch an advert for a particular company that's probably the same as 5 years ago.
Yeah, and the problem is what's dropped out of it is storytelling. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to shock and awe. They're trying to grab you right here, right now, and then in the mornings, they'll be looking at the sales on their website and seeing the data. So there's no slow burn anymore. There's no winning someone over to your side. It's just trying to get them to buy straight away.
So it's taking the human out of it, really, because they're just, it's almost like they're just
hanging fruit.
Well, it's like we're an object to them, a data, it's
This is a problem. This is a wider problem for a lot of industries. It's where, you only have to watch, if you've got Netflix, you go and watch the documentary on Boeing, and Boeing, the airplane maker, and Boeing ended up in trouble because they stopped being an engineering-based company making engineering advancements in aeronautics. And they became a Wall Street company where it was driven by the bottom line. Yeah,
and also their staff retention. I actually know people in that industry and have worked for Boeing, and they do have a really high turnover rate in across the board, to be honest. So this is part of what I do in working with businesses around wellbeing. So it's interesting to see that their retention rate, and they actually, there's a very small care factor because they know they're called Boeing, people want to work for them, so they're always going to draw people into work there. But the actual culture of the business is, as you say, very bottom line and system based, not people based, so they can't retain really good people, so therefore the quality goes out of it. And I imagine that's what's happening across advertising as well, you know, in marketing firms.
Here's the scenario that I see, and Boeing's not the only company that does it. Advertising agencies do it. Everyone sort of does it. What makes Boeing different as a business is the makeup of their engineering team. Yeah, and back in the day, my dad was an engineer, my brothers are engineers, and and even in the big petroleum companies, the engineers were the heroes. The engineers were the guys that, hey, think differently, tell us how we're supposed to do this, re-engineer the business, that's why they're called engineers, to move us forward and be considered one of the greatest companies on the planet, right? You go to those companies today and the engineers are almost hidden away in back rooms, and it's all these young data, advertising, marketing, human resources type people trying to polish it up and make themselves look good, but the actual heart and soul, the heartbeat of the business is hidden away. And we're getting that also with creatives in advertising. You've got data guys coming in. And so now they're looking at data spikes and saying, oh, that's spiked, so we'll just do 100 spikes. But the problem is every time you create a piece of content that sparks an interest and then you try and recreate it, every time you try and recreate it, it almost drops by half because you're never as creative as the first time. And we see ads trying to repeat all the time on cheap hits. And it's a drug to these companies, where if we go back to some of the great advertising campaigns like Katut and whatever her name was, like a sunrise, right? That was a story that was told over 2 years to the point where there's people waiting for the next episode.
You know what? And I'll be honest, I was one of those people that, not because I didn't watch a lot of ads even back then, but I would catch it and be like, oh my God, what's happening? You know, like knowing it wasn't real, but what have they done now with this? Like I got excited. But there's great campaigns like Not Happy Jan. We still say this stuff today. You know, like we still say these things. If anyone says Softex, what is it? Tissue, Softex or whatever it is, I can't think of the actual brand of it, but I hear the song in my head and the little Labrador running along with the toilet paper. So there's ads that absolutely still stay with me today, but that one also told a story as well. Even though it was about this dog and some toilet paper, it's relatable. It told a story. There was something in it. I agree with you. So then,
in my book, the only ads worth watching nowadays are the Super Bowl ads, because that's the only time where they invest. Because the ads are so much, it's like $17 million for 30 seconds. That's the only time where brands actually sit down and say, you know what, we better get this right. And I've always wondered, why don't they do
there's wrong stuff. I've seen some from last time, and I was like, woo! I'm not sure. That's good money spent. I'm not sure about that. But the other thing is, there's a lot of Hollywood, that vapid kind of culture where they just chuck a celebrity in there. It's like all these perfume ads. Or I don't even know. We've stopped watching an ad sometimes, and the kids and I have thought, what was that about? Like, do we even know what product that was?
There's some pretty weird ones in the fashion.
Oh, yeah, but because they've got a celebrity in it, in a gorgeous gown or a great suit, I don't know what the advertisers are thinking, that suddenly we're all going to be like, woo, let's go get it because they use it. We're not stupid. We know they don't use it. They don't care.
Well, influencer marketing's pretty big, so you never know how it returns on the social.
Well, I mean, I guess that's where I like to come in and help people evolve beyond that kind of low-level influence, to be honest, which is why I like where you come at it, because that's a high-level influence. You're actually looking at telling a story from a personal space so that people can actually connect. I mean, that's one of our human needs, is to connect. And we definitely connect through stories. It's what you found, as a young boy with the postie, connecting people in the neighborhood and getting to know what was going on, which was really beautiful. I mean, look, as a kid, I definitely was about human nature. So I used to sit back and watch people and help me learn how to approach them. And obviously that's what I do now. So then all of that's happening. You're starting to see that there's something more to this, that there's marketing is. So how did you move towards creating Virable?
So Virable as a business came about where I left Channel 7. So I left my job. I thought, no, this is good enough. I'm getting enough traction on this. And the original plan for Virable was that I was going to build a production company that only made viral videos. And the dream was to just work with companies like Red Bull and a couple of the others. And that became it was a good business, but we're talking 2012, 2013. So you still got a lot of the big businesses and the marketing managers not willing to take a risk on social media. They just wanted to run ads, get me impressions, get me SEO, all that sort of stuff. They didn't understand the power of actual creating the content and taking the attention of the world away by creating better content. They wanted someone else to make the content and just put the ads on it. They wanted the easy route.
Yeah.
So there weren't too many who were willing to take the risk. So it became too hard a pitch at that time. It was probably ahead of itself, really. But to prove what I actually knew and my expertise, I needed to formulate it. I needed to deliver something that showed people that I knew what I was talking about and that I'd actually figured something out. So originally I'd set 6 months aside to do this research into viral videos, and it was my very own PhD. Why do people share shit? That's exactly what it was, right?
Yeah.
I went to a guy at Melbourne University. I said, look, I want to do a PhD, but I don't want to do it here, but I just want to understand, how do you do them? And he goes, we just start with one question. You got to find the answer. I said, a complex question or a simple one? He goes, simple the better. So I went, okay. He goes, what do you want to study? I said, I'm trying to study why viral videos spread across the internet. And he goes, oh, so why people share shit. And I went, perfect. And it was supposed to be 6 months work. It ended up being probably about 2.5, but it took me around the world. I was really street smart. I was still working a bit as a freelance reporter, and I started to work with brands, offering them stuff outside of what my long game was, but it got me into positions to advance the long game. So one example of that was Avatar, the movie, coming out on DVD or coming out on Blu-ray. And I knew it was going to come out on Blu-ray. And I also knew that James Cameron, who was the director of Avatar and also Titanic and had won Academy Awards, was a guy who was interested in this topic. I knew that he was. And so I just started schmoozing Sony to say, listen, I'm a freelance journalist. Send me to the launch of Avatar on Blu-ray and I'll get it reported on the news for you. So I'll do it as a PR junket. But really what I wanted was that 15 minutes in the room with James Cameron to hit him up with, why do you think people share stuff on? No. Well, the question for him was more about the length of videos. So the research of why people share stuff then came down to, how long should your videos be? Everyone, all these social media gurus are out there saying your video's got to be 1 minute and 17 seconds long because humans are evolving to have the attention spans of goldfish and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, really?
No, we're not.
James Cameron just made a movie that ran for 3 hours and he took home $1.1 billion.
And they're still doing it today and we're still watching them.
And so I'd go, so to prove it, like, this is how far I took my research, I'd actually go and sit in the hallways of cinemas. And I'd wait for 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 17 seconds, 1 minute, 17 seconds for all the goldfish-headed humans to come out of the movies because they could no longer pay attention. And so I was like, okay, viral videos that hold people's attention for longer do better because of the way the Google algorithm rewards people for watch time. So that was a big part of it. So then I got to Hollywood and I sat with him, and I don't know if you know how these junkets work, but he and another producer will sit in a chair and journalists from all over the world are just shipped in slots, one after the other.
Yep.
He sits there all day. And I'm like, okay, I got 10 minutes with him. The story that I need to run to satisfy Sony is probably going to need to be 5 minutes. So that gives me 5 minutes to talk about what I want to talk about. And so as soon as I sat down, I said, listen, I don't want to ask you about the movie at the moment. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you on something separate first. And will you entertain that? And he sort of looked at me as if, oh my God, what's this guy going to
What
do?
am I going to be asked?
What sort of social media stunt is this? And then the other producer, who's John Landau, who was actually on Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I said, John, love your work. Yeah, it sort of sucked up to him a bit. And he sort of laughed and thought, come on, he's an Aussie. This will be funny. And so I said, I'm studying viral videos and, they're talking about attention spans and blah, blah, blah. And he leant forward and he goes, I'm fascinated.
I'm in.
He said, I'm fascinated with your thinking here. He goes, but here's the thing. We've got to do this interview. And I'm like, yeah, we've got to do this interview. He says, so if I promise to give you the answer at the end of the day, will you hang around to hear it? I said, well, of course I would. And he goes, no, you're not understanding me. He said, I love what you're talking about. I'm fascinated by it. But if I promise to meet you at on the tennis court, after all this is done, and give you the answer, would you hang around? I'm like, of course I would. And he goes, I do the same thing in my movies. And that was just, it was a light bulb moment where it all came together. So story loops and double narratives and unresolved brain issues, unresolved brain problems, and the curiosity of the brain to never leave open story loops to close that curiosity, because until you do, it's using energy. And so it all sort of span around. I just remember going, oh my God, how am I even going to do this interview now? Because my brain, he just gave me a missing link to everything.
Yeah.
And so I ended up sitting with him that afternoon and John Landau, and I had my folder, this exact folder in my hands.
I love it. We've got a beautiful, for the people listening, we've got an old binder with the clips in it. Oh my God. It's the same stuff. I love it. The spread factor. Amazing.
Yeah, I had the formula that I've written,
yeah,
and sort of explained it to him as this is how I can measure whether humans connect with content. And he was blown away by the thinking, which was, even saying it now really amazes me, because I don't believe, I just sort of, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's all that. But when I think back to his reaction, I'm like, damn, I should be charging way more for all this. Like, this is crazy. But it was just a fascinating time to get to that realization that this was something. And then obviously the formula that I showed you, that turned Virable almost into a market research business, where rather than researching the flavor of cereals like supermarkets do before they release a home brand product, I was doing the same for content. So big banks, big brands, we would sit a demographic in a room, they'd use that scorecard to spit out a score, and if the score out of 100 was over 80, we knew that those people were most likely going to share it online, that demographic.
wow.
So we knew the connection was there. And that was really cool until sort of the empathetic side of me came out, and it was like, I want to help the little guys. I don't want to help the big brands that are already established. I want to help the startups be disruptors, and I've got disruptor in me. And so I started going to the little guys who are trying to launch and say, listen, I can get you the attention that the big guys get, but for a fraction of the money that they spend. Like, this is about outmaneuvering and outsmarting the big brands just on brain science, story science and brain science. And yeah,
But you're talking about doing what marketing companies were doing way back when, because they had to grab people's attention. They had to work hard for it. And now, although they might get a view or, and be able to monitor all the data on it, I don't know that it's equating to sales. Like, I'm still not convinced that we're actually being fed correct information that, that's actually converting to great sales for them. Oh, no, just in terms of larger companies and the advertising they put into it, I still believe that smaller companies, when done well, can actually have a much larger impact than they imagine. So I want to ask,
especially on social media. And the reason why social media is different is because social media, the people hold the remote control. If you go back to the old media, the media structures, I worked in sales for a commercial television station, and I was assigned one of the biggest advertising agencies in the country, And every week you'd have lunch with these people from the advertising agency, and they'd tell you what brand they've got on board, what campaign's coming up, what spots they wanted. But, I would sit at those lunches, and I know people who love that job. Like, they'd just go to great lunches at great restaurants and just be friends with these people, and these people would give you business money. Yeah, and then you get bonuses if you got more money than what you did last month. But for me, I couldn't stand it. Like, I couldn't stand those client to agency meetings, because I knew in my heart that they were only sitting there because they wanted a 30-second spot in Friends that they'd missed booking 2 months ago before it sold out, and I was the person to solve their problem. So they're only schmoozing with me and flirting with me and warming me up with good food because they wanted something, and that the actual relationship that I thought we were having originally, when I was a bit more naive, was based on want rather than desire, in a sense. Like, it was fake.
Yeah. It was based on just a need, and not really like a personal and an absolute like relationship, which, that comes through really clearly with you, that you are all about relationships. And so I do want to ask you, what's the importance of authentic storytelling?
Authentic's one of those words that gets really, really overused. But
Well, now it does. I understand. Okay. It's like the word polarity at the moment. And so if we can go back like 10 years.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think it's real. Look, humans aren't dumb. That's the thing. Like, we're getting salty, and I'm almost the anti-social media guru, right? But so often I get pitched into people as a social media expert, and I really don't like it. It's just that what I teach works well on social media because that's where people's attention is. And so what we're getting into in a world now, and I've been saying this since 2014, but it's probably more prevalent now than ever, is it people need to start, particularly if you're in something like you're a real estate agent, or you're a car salesperson, or you're a mortgage broker, or you run your own business. The best way for you to advertise and get clients is for free, right? The best advertising budget in the world is free. And the beautiful thing about Facebook, the beautiful thing about TikTok, the beautiful thing about Instagram and Snapchat is that they allow you to advertise your wares for free, right? So all it comes down to then is your ability using that free platform to connect. And when you align and connect with your story, then people are more likely to get to know you. They're more likely to resonate with what you're talking about. And if you tell your stories properly, with pain and moments of truth and lessons, then possibly the lessons that you're sharing are the lessons that they need in their life to remove pain or to progress and advance forward and be happy. Whether you're selling a toilet brush or whether you're selling mental health solutions, right? It's all still pain and desires. That's really what humans are run by. And so your ability to do that on social media for free all comes down to your skill of sharing your story and being authentic. Because the moment you try and be someone else, they know, they can tell. I mean, video is not like sitting person to person. You don't get as many receptors. You don't get as good a feel for the person. But humans are getting so smart at consuming video that they can pick up on it.
Yeah, and I must admit, I do love that about the work that you do, and it's probably pretty aligned with how I work with clients, and it's almost guiding them. Here is an approach, a framework that you can work within. And if you're honest and you just show up as yourself, then this can work for you. But if you choose to, put a lens on it, put a filter, then it's probably not going to work for you.
Let's go to real estate, for example. I do a lot of work in real estate because it's actually a business where what I teach works really well, because buying and selling a home is such an emotional process.
Yeah, well, it's one of the biggest purchases that most people will ever make in their lives.
Look at all the hysteria at the moment around mortgage rates going up. Like, mortgage rates have gone up 0.35%. Now, fair enough, it's gone up and it's going to cost people more. But at the end of the day, it's not a massive massive rise in interest rate. Like, interest rates are still incredibly low in the history of the world. You're talking home loans at 4%, right? Some people have had home loans at 17, 19, 20%. Right? But so it's still relatively low, but there's a lot of hysteria and worry and concern about it. And I think the mainstream media is partly to blame. They feed it.
Partly?
Almost wholly to blame. There are people on social media who do it too.
I think the last 2 years has really proven to us the hysteria that has been created by funneling a single-minded message. So this is now no different as well. Yeah. And you're right, people are highly intelligent. And for me, it's been amazing to watch people step more and more into that, knowing that they're intelligent and being able to see beyond the bullshit as well, which is really good. But I love what you're saying around this, because there is some hype.
Yeah, so if we get back to the real estate agents, right? I say, hey, think about the real estate videos that you see on social media, and your mind will instantly go to a model of a video that real estate agents always make. You know, it'll be the European car pulls up to the front door of a house. He says, hey, come in and have a look at 123 Wombat Drive, he or she, you know, and they'll swing the door open and you'll float around the house and you'll do a tour of the house. Right, it could be a 4-bedroom house, could be the best one in the street, whatever it is. The chances of that video landing in the feed of someone who's in the market to buy a 4-bedroom house on Wombat Drive at that moment is basically 0 to none. Right? That's not how you get clients in. That's not how you connect, because there's nothing personal about it. It's just an agent trying to sell. So the next level of real estate agent videos that we get is you get the guys who are trying to, the guys and the girls. When I say guys, I mean both, but probably got to get more correct or more accurate nowadays. But
listen, I think we're good here on this podcast. I think people know that I think PC is bullshit, and it's well beyond PC now. It's over sensitivity.
So you get the guys and the girls who come in and they're all alpha. I'm the best agent in the place. I'm going to get you the best price. I've sold 100 properties. I've sold 200 properties. I've got the best GCI. I've got this. I've got that, right? Here's the problem. Not everyone's an alpha personality.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I go into sales teams and you get alpha, and he's got the most sales, and he gets spoilt by the bosses because he brings them the most money. And then you get the junior kids who come in, who can be quite, beautiful souls and beautiful personalities, but they're trying to be the alpha because they see that's where success is. So they start making videos and communicating the same way that the top guy does. And it's because the business owners go, I want you to be like him because he makes me the most money. So who does he do his training under? Who does he do his work experience under? Bang, the main guy. But then you're losing the beauty of it. So I've got to the point where I'm working with real estate agencies now, almost developing a soap opera across their sales team. So I go into an office, there'll be 10 people in there, and, I can sum them up pretty quickly around storytelling frameworks and personality builds, where I can say, okay, the reason why your real estate agency is struggling in this neighborhood is because you've got too many single types of personality archetypes. And you only have to go back to Disney and look at how Disney does it. They've got a princess for every kid, right? There's a princess in the Disney catalog for every personality type. And that's so that every kid gets a princess to connect to. And when they connect to that princess, they want to buy stuff connected to that princess, right? So they're staying true to themselves, but they've got someone to connect to and still participate in the commercial realities of the world. Go back to the real estate agents, and you can be in an inner eastern Melbourne suburb, and it's all the alpha guys in their European cars and their slip-on leather shoes and no socks, and their good, their beautiful suits and their slick hair and their big watches, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, right? You're picturing them, and I sit there and go, well, where's your 55 to 65-year-old woman, female, who's been divorced? And I go, what do you mean? I said, well, houses transact in many different ways. First home buyers, upsizers, and then divorce and breakdowns. And usually in these inner suburbs, the guy has gone off and upgraded or downgraded or young graded, whatever you want to call it. It's not an upgrade or a downgrade. He's gone for a new model for whatever reason, right? And he doesn't want to do anything. He's running his big business. He doesn't want anything to do with the selling of the house. It's like, you just do it, hands it to the wife. And then not only does the wife have to think about selling the family home where all her memories are, and that's really hard for her, and it's an emotional thing, she's also in the market to actually buy a new house once the old one's sold. Yet these real estate agents are trying to send in guys to win her business who remind her of her husband. Right? So it's not going to work. So they need to send someone in who connects with her. Hey, I've been there. I've been through this with you. These are the challenges you're going to face. These are the traps you have to avoid. This is what happened to me. And if I was to do it again, this is what I'd do different.
Mm.
And guess what happens when you send someone in that has that conversation with that woman?
They get the same.
They trust. They feel the same. They feel comfortable. There's trust, and you're more likely to do business, and you haven't even had to sell. It's a connection. It's a human-to-human connection that then allows people to benefit each other.
Mm.
There's no element of sale or scam or trickery. It's, this is me. This is my life experience. I see the situation you're in. This is how I relate to it. Right? And my advice to you would be to do this. Not, hey, come with me. I'll sell your house for you and buy you a new one. This is what I do. And then you walk away as a real estate agent. You walk out. Before you get in the car, the lady will ring you and say, okay, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Connect.
So then, okay, what are the key aspects to sharing your story and to being real about it?
There's a couple of steps you've got to go through. And the first one is you've got to work out what your own brand story is.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done a lot of this, and your business has evolved as a result of it. You've got to work out who you are.
Yeah.
And the problem is, particularly in a modern world, with modern education systems and modern media, is that we get trained to be someone else. We get trained and have masks put on, I think is the term you like to use. You get trained to put masks on to behave in a certain way if you're in a certain position in society. You only have to look at journalists on television. Now, I know you don't watch mainstream television, Ian, but maybe
I see enough clips.
do me a favor tonight, right? At 6 o'clock tonight, turn on the news. No, don't belittle this. This is serious. And anyone who's listening to this or watching this, go and do this, right? It's hilarious. And I used to be a journalist, so this is why I find it really funny, because I used to call this out all the time. Turn on the news, right? And watch the journalists reporting, particularly now there's an election. Like, it's rife what happens. So listen to the journalists on the news and the language that they're using and how they talk. They don't talk like normal people. They use a language that is only spoken by journalists. I call it journalese. They'll say things, almost their sentences are almost backwards for impact. It's like, who started this? Like, I'm always like, who's the first political reporter or the first news reporter that started to speak this way that now everyone else copies them?
Well,
I'll give you an example. Police reporters. The offender decamped in a southerly direction. No. The bad guy ran towards the train station. But that's how we really talk. Right? And so you look at this and you look at how people communicate that way, and that's the problem. So you've got to work out who you are. You've got to be aware enough of yourself, or have someone guide you. It's something that I do. Have someone guide you that helps strip you back to your actual archetype of your personality, to what's wired inside you. Sure, there's been external influences that have shaped you, but essentially you'll have a personality type. Work out your brand story. Like a big brand does, work out what your belief system is and work out what your mantra is in life. So what's going to drive you to stick within your belief system? That's the first bit. And it's probably the furthest thing away from viral videos you'd ever think of, right? But that's what came out. Like the brands that were sending viral videos, always had clear belief systems, or always had clear mantras. The next thing they do is they have rules of engagement. Now, rules of engagement are really simple, just really simple rules that make sure that you don't get romanced by what's working for someone else.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're the young real estate agent, you don't get romanced into acting like the alpha dog real estate agent, right? It keeps you on the straight and narrow. It stops you from being distracted by what everyone else is being, and then all of a sudden you'll find yourself in this really comfortable lane where you can just tell your own story and react to what's going on in the world in your own way, and it makes creating content really, really easy because you're not sitting there having to think, oh my God, what does the pretend version of me need to say here?
Well, it's almost like, what do people want to hear? Let me tell that story. Like, what do I think people want to hear, rather than, wow, that was interesting, I'm going to respond to that and share my
And on it, if I am making up videos, if I am making up a personality or living up to an expectation every time I'm creating content, is what I'm planning to say today in contradiction to anything I've said previously? Because once it's on the internet, it's always on the internet, and I don't want that one little troll calling me out and saying, hey, you're saying this today, but 7 weeks ago on Thursday at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Facebook Live, you said this, and now you're a bullshitter. And no one wants to get called out for that.
It's funny, I actually started watching a few of my old videos, and I was laughing at, but in terms of content, I was like, I'm still saying the same things, in a different way. I'm more evolved, I've learned, I've grown, but it's still that same, when you talk about rules of engagement, it's still that same thing. That really spoke to me when I worked with you about just, not sticking in my lane, but that's what the rules of engagement were for me. Okay, this is how I want to share things, which is the most real way that I can do it. And it absolutely stopped me in my tracks and blocked out how other people were doing it. And I would go, oh, that's cool. And also it helped me connect to more authentic people when I went, oh, they're being real right now. And everything they share has this a consistent feel to it as well. So yeah, that's really what the rules of engagement did for me. I took away all the fancy stuff and stopped trying to do it all differently all the time, and just deliver it this way.
And there is a bit of a syndrome that some of my clients I've worked with, over 250 of them now one-on-one, is that some of them, a small percentage of them, feel this urge to be different every time they talk. I've got to change my message. I've got to talk about something else. No, you don't. You just need to stay true to yourself. The message will evolve as you evolve. But they're like, no, I've got to make 20 videos this month or 100 videos in a month. And that's why if you get those social media programs or those social media experts who advertise on Facebook and say, hey, come to us and we'll make you a year's worth of content in a weekend, right? Run away, because you don't know how you're going to be feeling in a week, let alone a month, let alone 6 months, let alone 9 months.
I mean, look, I've done that. I've definitely, 5-6 years ago, maybe a bit longer now, I can't remember. But I did that. I did spend time with someone doing that. I hadn't met you yet, so it must have been longer, maybe 7 years. And I remember looking at these videos now, which I've completely deleted off my system. I've not kept them, not used them again, and just thought it's not even anything that I would use now, and it's, so it's interesting.
It's because they cease to be real, relevant, and relatable.
Yeah, because I was so scripted as well. And I think that's part of when people try and put you into a cookie cutter approach, which is really what I love about what you do, is that it is, hey, here's a guide, here's a structure for you, but you got to put yourself in it. For it to work, you have to be in this, and a lot of other marketing stuff that I've done over the years. And, when I speak to people, it's the same. Here is a system, and do it this way and you will get this results. And there's not you in that. There's not.
Do it our way, the way that we did it. And here are the results that we got doing it our way. Now, I can't guarantee you're going to get the same results as us, but this is the proof that we got the results that we got doing it our way. But guess what? The moment you start pretending to be someone else is the moment that you're going to start to fail.
Well, 100%.
Like what's,
100%.
There's
I mean, look,
so many brand examples of where companies have come in to try and be the next, if I speak to someone who says, I've got the next Uber of whatever the industry they're in, or the next Netflix of the industry that they're in, I'm like, seriously? Just go and be your own version of whatever it is you do. Right? Don't try and be them. You can't be them. And that's it. Just do you. It's so important.
100%. So, brand story, rules of engagement. What other key aspects are there?
The next key aspects are storytelling frameworks. Now, most people...
I mean, that's a massive topic, yeah.
Yeah, most people think that they know how to tell a story because someone told them that was a good story once. But there are actual frameworks that the brain likes. And the reason they're not just things that people have created and, people like Disney or Shakespeare or any of those guys, it's not just frameworks that they've created. They've actually reverse engineered it. Go back all the way back to Aristotle, back in the ancient Greeks, and he used to sit there and have to watch every one of the performances in front of the kings and the emperors and stuff. And there were some that the crowd loved and wanted to watch every week. And he was like, well, what are they doing that the ones who aren't so popular? Almost similar to what I'm doing right now with viral videos. What are they doing? I'm not saying I'm at Aristotle level by any means, but it's this research of what's happening and refining it over years of best practice has actually spat out that there's probably 7 to 10 really strong story frameworks that the human brain opens story loops to and then hangs around to find the finish. The James Cameron approach, right? He's a master of storytelling. He understands these frameworks. He uses one called the Hollywood plot, which gets a lot of chatter on social media, but for most people, it's probably too complicated.
Yeah.
The easiest one is the 3-act play, and that comes from Aristotle himself, right? So start with a story driven by a desire. Right. So what's the desire that your clients or the people you help or guide, what's a problem that they're trying to solve? What a desire they want to finish. Then you take them on a journey of self-experience. So I've been on this journey and this is what I experienced, or when you go on this journey, this is what it's going to be like. And then you get to a point or a moment of truth where it's like, okay, we've been on the journey and then we get to here and we have to make a decision. Are we going to go ahead with this or not? Are we going to take the leap or not take the leap? Are we going to knock on the door or not knock on the door? Am I going to make the videos or not make the videos? You have to have that moment of, am I going to do this or not? Now, whether you make the decision or not doesn't matter. It's whether there's success or failure. Maybe by not doing something, by not crossing the road when the light's green, right? You're going to survive. You won't fail. You'll succeed because you won't die that day. On the other side, the success or failure, whether you do it the moment of truth or not, is really less important than the actual lesson of the overall story. And that's the one bit I'll add to the 3-act play of Aristotle's. He finishes at success or failure. I always say success or failure, but the modern brain wants to know the lesson. So the lesson can be just trusting yourself to get to the point where you know that you need to make a decision. And maybe in your case, maybe you didn't make that call today. Maybe you didn't make the decision to knock on the door or not knock on the door. Maybe you got to the point and that was enough for you that day. That was emotionally tiring enough. Like that put you to your point where you can't go any further. But you know what? You'll be more familiar for the journey when you go next time. You'll be better prepared. And the lesson is, I've been there now. I know what to expect. I'm not scared of the bits that I didn't know, because all fear comes from the fear of the unknown. I've got experience in that now. So now I'm more prepared when it comes to the moment of truth to actually take the leap. Back myself.
I love it. So what are the 2 main areas that people go wrong with storytelling?
The first one with storytelling is that they tell other people's stories. They do.
Do you know, but in my line of business, I can tell you for years, people like tell the client story, and that's great, but it doesn't necessarily, it's good every now and again that can drop in. But really people, when they want to work with you in the level that I work with people, they want to know where I'm coming from. They actually want to know about me, and me continually telling a client story is just advertising all the time. It's marketing.
It goes with everything, right? So from sales scripts to presentation scripts to keynote scripts, most of my time, prior to COVID, I was working as a keynote speaker. And and the client would say, I want to see your script for your keynote. I said, I don't have one. Like, well, how are we going to trust you to be on stage for 45 minutes to an hour and we don't know what you're going to say? I said, I don't know, because I don't know what I'm going to say. Because I don't know who's in the audience. So until I know what sort of people are in the audience and their personality archetypes in the audience, and how they feel and how they react and the mood of the room. And I always watch people's faces when I'm keynote speaking, and I'll adjust my keynote based on the mood of the room. I'm an expert in that. So that's why you pay me so much money, right? But they get really panicked because it's this fear of the unknown. So the thing is, I'm not going to get up there and give you Gary Vaynerchuk's talk. I'm not going to give you a Gary V.
No.
Because I'm not Gary V. But I tell you what, whenever I speak at events, there's always one or two guys or girls that get up there and try and be the next Gary V. And I sit there and just go, they come off and they go, oh, that person was awesome. It's like, no, they weren't. All they've done is regurgitate everything that they've just read on Google or watched off his videos. There's nothing new there. It's the same in real estate. All the coaches in real estate are really similar. They teach the same stuff, particularly in social media. There's nothing new there. It's like, hey, go to Google and set up Google My Business, and then post videos here, but they don't tell you how to make good videos. They just say you got to make videos. So all the hard bits they just leave to the clients, who end up doing nothing because they don't know how to do the hard bit.
So really, show up as yourself. Just be yourself.
Show up as yourself. Have a clear goal in your story framework. So understand that three steps. And I can give you a link to a template for the 3-act play if people are interested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pop that as part of the bio. So people can click on that link.
So it's awesome. Real estate focused, but they'll still get the lessons out of it and understand.
Yeah, beautiful.
The next thing they've got to do is you just got to do it. And we also.
And do you think that's part of what people go wrong? Like they just don't do it, not showing up. I go wrong here. Taking action.
100%. Look, I've got a black eye at the moment. As soon as I got it, I was like,
there is a serious black eye going on. Yeah, that's.
This isn't video. This is just audio based. Okay.
No. We've got it. It'll be both. It'll be video and audio.
Video first. That's the other thing. Video first.
Always video, and there is a podcast. There is on Spotify as well, so people can listen or watch.
Yeah, so I've got a cracking black eye from being hit in the eye with a hockey ball on Monday night. Today is Wednesday. That's about 36 hours old, and it is all kinds of purple. It's fantastic. I was very lucky.
Coming through nicely there, Jonathan. It's coming through nicely.
I was very, very lucky that it got me where it got me, and I didn't end up with stitches or an eye problem or broken bones or broken teeth. So,
getting hit with a hockey ball. Really, you are very blessed that it didn't.
It was full pelt too, so it came very quick.
Nice.
So I was lucky, but. So the point is to do, and I suffer this as well, Em. Like I can go out and I'll make a video. Like I made a video the other day. I've just taken a month off. I went up to watch my daughters playing a sporting tournament, and then that was to back into an Easter holiday with the family, but then we got COVID, so we ended up having to isolate. So in the end, my 2-week break ended up being a 4-week break. And I was like, how am I going to run my business if I've had a 4-week break? Like, even, businesses dry up, leads stop flowing in if you break the cycle too much. And I didn't make any videos while I was away on the sporting adventure because I wanted to be fully focused on my family, because we hadn't been away as a family for a while because of COVID. And then secondly, when I had COVID, the last thing I wanted to do was make any sort of work on. I couldn't even focus on the television. Like I was actually sick of being sick. That's how bad I had COVID. and so I did nothing. But the first day that I was able to do something, I came back, I just sat out in my yard and I just turned the camera on and said, I'm back. This is what's happened. This is what's happened the last 2 weeks. This is where I'm at. This is my focus. You get derailed, you've got to get back on the horse and keep going. On the back of that video, I get work and leads. And so I sit there and go, well, now I'm busy again. I don't have time to make any more videos. And so I don't. And so then I get a black eye and I'm like, oh, I can't make any videos while I've got a black eye.
Why not?
Well, that's right. It's just excuses. because it's easier to say no. But if you're struggling and you're not making money and your business isn't where you want it to be, or your life's not where you want it to be, you've got to get up off the floor and have a crack.
Yeah.
No one's coming to save you. You've got to save yourself. And for a lot of businesses, they're still using COVID as an excuse. They're still using lockdowns as an excuse. Now, there's no hiding from the fact that if you live in Melbourne, Victoria, where I do and you do, we got slammed. We went through 2 years of absolute, almost terrorism in a level of the way that we were controlled and the messages we were sent. We were pumped. The fact that during lockdowns we had curfews overnight, and during the curfews they'd fly a military helicopter over the suburbs of Melbourne to make sure that no one was driving around. And I've got hundreds, I've got like 5 or 6
and going out to my kids, I had like 4 or 5 helicopters, and there were different ones because you could hear the differences in them. And the kids and I would go and have a look and see that some were very large, like obviously, military, and then some were small at different. And we were just like, there were 3 different types one night over our area. And I was.
I actually posted a video to TikTok yesterday that has, I think it's done 1,000 views in 12 hours, of the Black Hawk helicopter that used to fly over the suburbs. It was flying again yesterday, and I videoed it on my iPhone. And
we had one over I was interested in that too, like a couple of days ago, having a helicopter, because I haven't heard them. We were hearing them a lot over the past couple of years, but in the past, like sort of 6 months, that this year, there hasn't been as much. And yeah, the past couple of nights, or a few nights ago, for a couple of nights in a row, I thought, why have we got helicopters again? Like, what's going on?
What's really interesting with it is that normally, prior to COVID, if we had a police helicopter or an ambulance helicopter flying over, or just even a military helicopter, would go out and say, oh, wow, it's just a military helicopter. What an impressive piece of machinery. Right? This is cool.
Yeah.
Now we're going out and looking at the helicopters and going, oh my God, what's wrong? And it's shifted our thinking, right? And this is where propaganda from governments, and we've been pretty protected from it in Australia for many years, but we've been slammed by it in the last 2 years, and we're not used to it. We're not conditioned to it like others. And so that's the big shift in that sort of stuff, right? And I know we're getting off topic, but
I actually had this question, like, what's been the changes over the past couple of years? So I love that it naturally went there anyway.
Yeah, but I'm just sort of saying to people that, it's time to park COVID as an excuse in your business. I made more money, and this isn't to brag, but this is just to prove that effort can pay off, is that between Melbourne Cup Day and Christmas last year, I made more money in that 6 weeks than I made in the 18 months prior. Now, in the 18 months prior, I wrote a book. I couldn't do keynote speaking. Dan Andrews wouldn't let me go out and record videos with my production company. I just basically had to sit around and do nothing. And there were millions of other Victorians who were going through the same thing. And it was for someone like me who's pretty self-motivated when I'm up and about. Look, no doubt, I have my downs. I really do.
Everyone does.
So I'm just like everyone else, right? I'm not bulletproof. I might seem like I come across as highly energetic, but I definitely have downs. Is it for someone who is naturally trying to be positive and motivated, to be forced just to sit around and almost just watch time go by was incredibly taxing.
Yeah.
Right? It was triggering.
Yeah.
So the moment that I could get out and about, which was Melbourne Cup weekend last year, I was like, if I get COVID, I get COVID. I've just got to go. Like, I've got a family to raise. I've got money to put back in the bank. I got to go. And so for the 2 weeks leading up to the release, I just made sure I had activity. Meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, talking about what I do. Just meeting people. Even if I thought the chance of selling to this person is 5%, it didn't matter, because that person would then be a chance of pinpointing me or directing me to someone who did want my services. I think what you got to understand is no isn't always no. No is just no for now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So never be so finalist that COVID's killed your business or COVID's knocked you for a 6. It's a bump. in the history of the world, it's a bump. It's been a big bump, but it's still a bump.
I love
And
it.
now is the time to get going. If you're struggling with anything, moving forward is the way out. Staying still isn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, and I say it to anyone, if you want your life to change, you need to.
No one's coming to save you.
Well, no one can change for you. So if you want your life to change, then you need to change. All right. I've got final 3 whats. You ready?
Yeah.
What is well-being to you?
Well-being to me is well-being to me comes from having a clear path. Comes from clarity.
Okay.
If I don't have clarity on where I'm going or what I'm doing, if I start doubting that, maybe I want to go and be an auctioneer, or maybe I want to go get a job, that creates turmoil in me. And then that affects a lot of things. I'll stop exercising. I'll stop communicating with people. I'll stop holding myself accountable to the tasks that I want to do that were going to get me to where I wanted to be previously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's that self-doubt of belief, I think. So well-being is when I'm right, no, this is the path I'm going. These are the steps I need to take. This is the work I need to put in for it to come back and be successful.
Beautiful. I love that. So what are your must-do daily well-being practices?
A cup of tea in the morning. I just love a cup of tea in the morning. And yeah, last week I had to go interstate for work for a film shoot, and I had to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't put on the kettle and have a cup of tea because I'd wake the kids.
Yes.
And then I went to the air. And then I was at the airport, and a cup of tea at the airport probably not going to be as good as one at home. So I didn't have it. So I thought I'll have one on the plane. And then there was so much turbulence in the flight. They said we're not serving anything hot. So a cup of tea is a daily must. Exercise isn't essentially a daily must, but it's definitely a weekly must.
Yep.
I've got to play some sort of a group sport weekly, and I've got to at least spend probably every second day at least an hour by myself.
Yeah.
Like I work from home, as you can see, this is a home studio,
Yep.
and I do spend a lot of time by myself at home, but I need to be exercising by myself. And I have comfort in solitude, and I think anyone who can find that for themselves, it's a wonderful place to be able to go.
Absolutely. Okay, final wash is what impact does having well-being practices have on your life?
The well-being practices allow me to be in the room when I'm in a room. And that comes back as a boomerang in so many different ways. It allows me to be an attentive partner to my wife. It allows me to be an attentive dad to my kids. It allows me to have better work relationships because when I'm meeting with someone, I actually have clarity. I've done all my thinking on my own by myself. I've got nothing else to worry about than the conversation in front of me, the people in the room with me. And so I find that to be the secret, I suppose. And it's a guy by the name of Nigel Risner, who's a keynote speaker in the UK. And he always says, if you're going to be in the room, be in the room.
100%.
And I swear by that a lot.
Yeah, I remember hearing that as a kid from one of my nan's friends. Just be where you're at. All of you, be where you're at. And I didn't get it until I was a lot older. But I remember having a moment where I was like, I'm not being where I'm at. I'm like, I'm somewhere else. So that is beautiful. This has been amazing. There are like a huge amount of, there's such a huge amount of value in that for anyone watching and in business, small or large. And if you're wanting to connect with Jonathan, then I'll put, I was doing 2 words at once. That's happened a lot to me this week.
In the room.
And so I will pop the links in, they'll be below. So if you've, enjoyed this, then please like and share and comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Jonathan, thank you so much for being with me today, sharing all this beautiful time and the passion, the knowledge and the mastery of what you do so generously. So thank you for being here, and thanks to everyone for sharing your beautiful time by listening or watching.
Thank you for having me on your platform. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk about what you love talking about. The fact that anyone even wants to listen is a win for me. Like that's where I sit.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Connected Conversations. Bye for now.
To connect with Jonathan, head to www.virable.com. To connect with me, head to emmamuir.com. Enjoy your day, and thanks for sharing your time.